everybody, BooDro here. I have with me Mr. Scott Eason. Well, Scott, go ahead and give everybody your social media. Internet dictates that everybody watches at least the first 30 seconds in. So let's get that out of the way, and then we'll get into some conversation and some tattooing.
All right. Yeah, I'm on all social media. I'm at the Scott Eason, TheScottEason. You'll find me on all socials with that. You can visit my website at scotteason.com. And that pretty much covers everything. You can find me one way or another that way.
Awesome. Definitely check Scott out. He is like a cornerstone of Huntsville comedy. You're local to Huntsville, or?
I've been here pretty much all my life.
Okay.
I moved here when I was very small and just have called it home for so long. I'm a native Huntsville.
Okay.
I've moved away a couple times, and like anything, the black hole sucked me back.
Gotcha. Yeah.
But I'm a native.
Yeah, Scott's a super busy guy. We're going to get into some of that, but definitely check out his social media. If he's in your area, you will not, I repeat, not regret going to see this guy on stage. He is so funny. Definitely a presence on a stage. So check out Mr. Eason. So Scott, you said that you have left Huntsville before. What other areas did you explore?
I moved down to Birmingham for a time and bopped around the Birmingham area, central Alabama. Wasn't really for me. Only two states I've lived in are Georgia and Alabama, but I visited 45 of our states.
Oh wow!
So I've been around. I like Alabama, man. I mean, honestly, it's one of those things. Like in a perfect world, I might not live here, but I enjoy it. It's good for raising a family. I have a wife and 3 kids, and we're very comfortable here. And Huntsville, the way it's booming, it's just a good place to be. I mean, it's very centrally located here in the South. So it's like we're 3 hours from Atlanta and an hour and 45 minutes from Nashville. It's like anywhere I need to get, I can get there pretty quick.
So the relocate to Birmingham, was that a comedy decision or just a life decision?
It was a life decision. Actually, you know what? When I didn't do comedy. I was actually, this was in the early 2000s, so it was like 2002 to 2004. I actually was engaged to my wife. Now is our first engagement, which is a key statement of our first engagement. Way back in 2002, this is very kind of Huntsville history type shit, but right when basically downtown started to get really developed with like Humphreys, and back then it was called the Chop House right next door, and it was like just really big for the city, and it was the first place that ever had valet parking. I had recently lost my job, and a friend of mine was a bartender at Humphreys, and it had just opened, so this place was fucking a madhouse. And he was like, "Hey man, they need help valeting cars." And I was like, "Well, shit, man, I'll do anything to like get me by for a little while." And started doing it, and before I knew it, I was making like $1,200 a week. And they offered me the job to be the manager, and I was like, "Yeah, sure." And I did that for a while, and then they said, "We want you to move to Birmingham to be an account manager, and you know, help us recruit down here and so on and so forth." I was like, "Cool." Only problem was like at that time it was like valeting. I would go to work at like 5 p.m. and wouldn't get off till 2 in the morning. If you've ever worked those kind of hours at 2 in the morning when you get off, you want to party. Everybody else is going to bed, and you're like, "Man, I just got off work. I need to blow off steam."
Yeah, you got energy.
Exactly. Hanging out with those restaurant crowds and things like that. Yeah, I mean, if you've ever worked in a restaurant, you know exactly what I mean. Those people are fucking crazy. And it was just like my fiance, we just kind of drifted apart. And then she was supposed to move to Birmingham with me. And basically she was like, you know, "This isn't working out," and gave me back the ring, and I was fucking devastated. Moved to Birmingham, and over time when I was down there, we kind of reconnected. And then, you know, I was like, you know, I don't really like it in Birmingham anymore anyway, and, you know, I want to be closer to her, so it was just time to come home.
Gotcha.
So I moved back.
So exactly.
There's that. I'm leaving out a lot.
Oh, I bet. Yeah, I bet.
There's a lot of shit.
Yeah, I bet there's a lot of shit.
There's a lot of shit in there.
In between the pains.
Yeah. The straw that broke the camel's back, actually, for Birmingham, the city was, like, Birmingham is a violent place. Anytime you look at, like, crime statistics, Birmingham is a top 10 crime city, man. If you ever watch First 48, it's fucking Birmingham or Memphis. That's where people are.
Yeah, that's where everybody's at.
Fucked up. We used to hang out at this bar over on Richard Arrington Avenue. This guy, we called him Crackhead Pete. I think you can figure out why we called him Crackhead Pete. I think the nickname's pretty self-explanatory. There was a flower shop, and they would do Pete a favor. They would give him old flowers, and he'd come to the bar and he'd sell these flowers. Right? Everybody loved Crackhead Pete. And then one day, I turned the news on, and they had found him in an alley right around the corner from that bar, and he was burnt to a crisp.
Oh, wow.
And come to find out what happened, two 15-year-old kids found him, and this is the first time I'd heard about this. They nutted him first, and I was like, what the hell is that? They took a piece of piano wire, wrapped around his balls, and popped him out.
Oh,
tortured him.
Yeah.
They tortured him. They beat him first, and they did that. Then they just set him on fire. And they caught the kids, and they asked them why. They asked them why they did it, and they were just like, "We just wanted to kill somebody." And I was like,
whoa.
That happened like right where I hang out. I was like, I'm fucking done, dude. I'm done. I'm fucking leaving. I ended up coming back and flirted with almost leaving Huntsville several times, but it just got to the point I was like, this is home.
What got you into comedy?
Well, I've always loved it. In 1987, seeing Eddie Murphy Raw, because my sister let me watch it when I was 9 years old. Way too young to watch Eddie Murphy Raw, but I just absolutely loved it, even though I didn't understand like everything he was talking about. You know, it's like you can't understand some of the subject matter, but I just knew he was funny. Because of course, you know, it was like seeing. I was like, oh man, Beverly Hills Cop. Oh, he's funny. You know, and then watching Robin Williams, Live at the Met was a big one for me. It was just like, oh shit, I loved it. I always grew up really liking stand-up, and one of those things in the back of my mind, like, man, I would absolutely love to try that one day, but there was no comedy in Huntsville. There was nothing. I mean, the comedy club, which is literally what it was called The Comedy Club.
Yeah, Nolan's Crawl Crew.
Yeah, well, no, that was the Cove. I'm talking like in
yeah,
the late
okay.
80s, early
All right.
90s on North Parkway. It was called The Comedy Club, and it burned down in 1990. Turns out it was insurance fraud. The owner torched it for the money. But then after that, there just wasn't anything here. We would get comedians that would come to the Von Braun Civic Center and perform there. Like bigger comedians, and if you could get on the Arsenal, they'd book comedians out at the Officers Club and shit like that. But if you couldn't get on the Arsenal, you couldn't go. So it was a wasteland. I mean, and even back then, it was like in Alabama, there was only one comedy club. It was the Star Dome, which opened in '83. And then Zany's has been there since the early '80s in Nashville. But it was like, again, Nashville wasn't like it was now. I mean, the comedy scene in Nashville now is booming. But even back in 2015, 2016, it was nowhere near what it is now. It hasn't always been big. It's just kind of grown with the times. But I just had this excuse of like, well, why don't you try it? Well, there's nowhere for me to try it, you know? And I was always the guy that people were like, oh man, you tell a great story and blah, blah, blah. And then finally the bar that I hung out at for years, just out of the blue, announces that WZYP was sponsoring a comedy contest. And my friends are like, well, now you got no excuse, man. It's literally, we come here, you know, every fucking night anyway, and now they're going to do comedy here. You got to try it. And I was like, oh shit, now I actually have to do this? And I sat down. I had like 2 or 3 weeks to prepare, and I wrote a set. And I went. I told everybody, man, all my friends, my family. My family didn't come, thank God. My wife's family came, and you know, a bunch of my friends. Oh shit, it was packed, and I ate shit, man. They cut my mic.
No way.
Well, because I had recently been to New York. And I had seen, a friend of mine took me to an old school peep show in the Village in New York. And it was literally like drop a quarter in a slot and the window would come up. Right? And we did it and I was like, oh yeah, this is cool, and kind of old school novelty. And that window came up and there was a woman fucking a dog.
Whoa.
And I was like, holy shit. And it was like just such a surreal thing. So I was like, I'll just write jokes about that. So I wrote like a 7-minute bit on bestiality about that experience. Oh, no. And to say that people weren't feeling it is an understatement.
Oh, no.
Yeah. And they cut my mic, and it was just like, my wife said, like, please don't ever do that again. And I was like, you know, I was very deflated. But Mojo, who's basically the DJ for WZYP, you know, the morning guy. He was the one hosting. He came up to me and he was like, "Hey man, like your material was awful, but you had a really good stage presence. Like, you know, you looked comfortable up there, you know." And he's like, I think you need to do it again." And I was like, I don't know, man. He was like, "You know what? I'm signing you up, man. You're going to do the next one. We're doing another one in a month. You're going to do it." And I was like, okay, fine. You know, so I'm going to try it again. And my wife's like, "Oh my God, no." So I went, and for a month I just sat and I wrote material. I just did my best to craft a 5 to 7 minute set, and went back the next month and it was packed. And this time I told my friends and my wife, they did not come. No one came.
No one came. Why
would they? It was packed, but with nobody there for me, because it was like they were all like, "Why would we subject ourselves to that again? Last time was not good." And I won.
Oh wow!
Yeah, I won the contest, which was cool. So it was like the second time I ever got on stage. I won $100, and then they tell me, they're like, "Hey, we're gonna start a comedy night here, and next week, like literally like 5 or 6 days after the show, they're like, we're gonna have these comedians come in. We want you to be on the show. Can you do 15 minutes?" And I was like,
"Holy
sure." Just completely fucking lied.
Yeah.
So then I had like 5 or 6 days to write 10 more minutes, and I did, and I did that show. And this time, like, my wife and more people came, and I did well for the room. But going back, I have video of it. I've watched it, and oh my God, it's like, it makes me want to kill myself. But people were laughing and shit.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I did 13 minutes.
You didn't do it.
15, did 13 minutes, and we got paid. And I was like, wow, like, oh my God, like, I just thought it was the funniest shit ever. So this was all in 2009. So I performed 3 times, and was like, oh man, this is it. I want to do this. And then they announced that the comedy show was, after that, canceled moving forward at that bar. I started trying to research open mics near us, and there really wasn't any. Like, Zanies didn't have an open mic. The Stardome would have one occasionally, but it was like driving 90 minutes each way to do 3 minutes total. It was just like a pain in the ass. So I just kind of shelved it. In 2011, I met Justin Ledlow. And Justin does improv, and he wants to be a comic. And we hit it off, and he's like, "Hey man, I have this idea for this show. I want to start doing some comedy here in Huntsville." And that's when he pitched me the idea for Epic Comedy Hour.
Oh, okay.
And July of 2011 was the first one, and I went to it, and it was just like 270 people came to the show, and it was just like, holy shit, because there was no other comedy in Huntsville at the time. Nothing. So it was like 270 people came to the first show, and don't get me wrong, the show, looking back quality-wise, comedians, not great, because it was all locals, people who literally did not have a stage to get on prior to that. So this was basically just like an open mic with 270 people.
Wow.
But it was still like, I was just enamored with the whole fucking thing. And then he asked me, he's like, "Hey, of course we're going to do it again next month. Do you want to be on it?" I was like, definitely. So I was on the second Epic. And then I basically, after that, we didn't have a big stable of comedians, I was on basically every month. And then after the first anniversary, or right around the first anniversary, he brought me and Tim Kelly on as co-producers.
Mm-hmm.
So Tim and I have been co-producers since 2012. And then in 2015, Justin stepped away and just left it to Tim and I. And basically, I've been the executive producer ever since. So
wow, that's awesome.
I've been producing the Epic total for just over 10 years, and been the executive producer for 7.
Wow, that's crazy, man. That is like at the cusp of, it was something becoming
so
something.
when Epic popped off, it just showed like Huntsville had a real hunger for comedy.
Uh-huh.
So it was like, then it was like we met a lot of like-minded people, Brandon Imes, Jonathan Craig, and Tom Hand, and like the list, many others. And it was like, oh shit, this can actually work. So it was like, then we all just started formulating like, oh, we can have an open mic here, and we can do this, and there's another show. And Homegrown, started basically just a little over a year after Epic.
Mm-hmm.
So Homegrown just celebrated 10 years and still going. So Homegrown started, and and then the mics, and just it's just been a steady snowball effect ever since. But it really all comes back to just me meeting Justin and Justin just having this crazy idea that paid off. If it wasn't for him, we wouldn't have the show, and I'm thankful for that. And honestly, I've put my heart and soul into it.
Yeah, it's a great show.
Years to turn it into what it is. So it's like, but yeah, credit always goes to Justin for being the founder. I've carried it a long time, but yeah, he's the guy that founded the show. And of course, me and Tim did it, just the two of us, for a long time. And here recently, we brought in Elliot White and Brent Reed as co-producers, because Epic has grown beyond just Epic Comedy out at the Low Mill. Now it's Epic Comedy Presents, because we have multiple shows.
Whenever there is no scene, like, how do you keep that momentum and that is it the other people that you're bringing out whenever you're having a bad day? They kind of like, well, I'll take the baton and continue, or what keeps it moving forward?
I do it for the love of the game. When I first started producing Epic and everything like that, it was such a rush, because like the show really became a monster in the first 2 years. The first year went by in a blur, and then like years 2 to 5, every show we sold out. Every show.
Yeah.
Every show we did.
Well, except for like COVID, that's the only time it stopped, right?
Yeah, the only time it ever stopped was COVID, and then we brought it back as quickly as we could. It's been steady, and it's just like, it was just so much fun. It helped me grow tremendously as a comedian. Like having this platform of like these comedy hungry people coming to the show, wanting to see that, and then being able to book great comedians from all over the place, because the reputation of the show had traveled. Mm-hmm. People are like, oh man, the show in Huntsville is crazy.
Yeah, you start getting killers on,
and they're like, oh shit, well I want to do that. And then it's like, that just turned for me into networking and meeting these people, which was instrumental in like, again, building myself as a comedian, but also like helping the show continue to grow. Anytime it was rough for me, it was just like being able to look around and know I'm surrounded by literally some of the best comedians working. When you're a comedian, especially like if you do it for a while, it's just like you're in a fraternity or sorority or a club, whatever you want to call it.
Everybody, thank you very much for watching. If you've made it this far, so like and subscribe, share, tell somebody about it. Really cool history lesson whenever it comes to Huntsville comedy, So let's continue the discussion. Go ahead and watch part 2 with Mr. Scott Eason. You can find his links to all his social media down at the bottom. But go ahead and click over to part 2, and thank you very much for watching. Have a good day.